Hey, it's Steve Orlando here again with a series that we're calling Who's Got the Juice? A bunch of conversations that I've been doing with folks across multiple industries, all stemming back to my work before I was full-time in comics, working with my friend's company, PM Spirits. It's fortuitous today because we're talking with the guy that started it all with PM Spirits, Nicolas Palazzi, who I'm on with. He is the man that set me up for where I am at now in comics, backing me when I needed some help. There wouldn't be this conversation series talking about different industries, giving us the tools we need to succeed in our chosen paths without Nick. So we're happy to have him on for a special guest appearance. Nick, hello.
What's up, dude? How are you?
I'm great. You know, New York and Boston, nothing going on in the pandemic, just very low stress times for everyone.
Yeah, it's just I don't see I haven't heard about anything. So there's no I don't think the pandemic is a pandemic. I don't know what
No,
that
what
is.
is it even? But it's good. It's good that we're talking either way. Look, people, for folks who watch the other conversations, you know, we're sort of keeping it pretty loose and just talking about, you know, our passions. Because as I've talked about on past episodes of this, PM Spirits is a spirits company. They're the folks that sort of backed me when I was going freelance. It gave me a chance to keep the lights on, which I will always appreciate. But what we've decided throughout these talks is that really spirits production, especially craft spirits production, it is a creative endeavor. And even though we've talked to pro wrestlers and voice actors and TV executives and everything and things far beyond that, and we will talk to people even further beyond that, I think it's nice to sit down today with Nick himself and really dig into this idea that spirits production, it is a creative endeavor. And when you get into those scenarios, the things you've learned in past gigs, because almost anyone in a creative field has had some other jobs, really empower you to achieve and succeed wherever you land when it comes to your creative interest. Me, it was comics writing. For Nick, it was spirits curating, production, selection, distribution, and we're going to get there. But the first question is, Nick, you know, you weren't always running PM. You weren't always Captain Cognac. You were probably Private Cognac at some point. Uh, I know that you were like doing stuff completely unlike the spirits world. Tell me about that. You were in engineering, right? So how did you get from there? How did you get into that? And then how did you come to be doing the first things that would become PM Spirits?
Well, I'm gonna give you like the very quick background, but I grew up between a winemaking family. Like we were making like little wines in the Côte d'Ivoire region of Bordeaux, and that I was on my mother's side. On my father's side, everybody was in the military. So and these were very open-minded people, obviously. And I have been basically raised at the farm while being taught that there were two kind of people in this world, and only two. And there were the salespeople, and there were the engineers. And obviously engineers were much better people. So that's kind of the environment I grew up in. It was like very like binary, I guess. So nobody necessarily asked me what I wanted to do, and I wasn't smart enough to understand or like ask myself a question. So I went for engineering because that was the kind of the only path. So I worked in France and then in the US as a chemical engineer. And one thing that happens when you are doing something that you're not made for, that you don't like, and is that slowly but surely you realize like you hate this shit, and that's what happened to me. 4 years into it in France, I was just I was bored. I wasn't happy, but at the time I wasn't smart enough to realize that it was the work itself, that like the entire lifestyle that I had that I didn't like. So I thought it was France. So I was like, all right, I'm done with France. I need to get out. And I landed pretty much the exact same job, but in the US. So obviously it didn't change a thing. Um, and I quickly realized, like 2 years into it in New York, I realized that I was waking up angry because I didn't want to do what I was gonna do that day, and I didn't want to see the people that I was gonna see that day. So I quit, and I said, all right, let's figure something out that I really want to do. Took me a little while to find out, but like booze, I like booze a lot. So that's sort of like what I've been doing since.
Now, let me ask you this. A lot of the conversations we've had in the previous talks have sort of focused on how, as we sort of grew up, myself included, our point of view on spirits and their role in society, their role in culture changed. You know, I was in college, and it really only meant one thing for me, like, you know, sort of forgetting my name, forgetting the day, you know, with whatever I could find in the small towns of upstate New York. The Keystone Red Can, as I said, my holy grail. That said, obviously, you went from a region known for spirits production. You got into a non-spirits field in engineering, and then you came back around for what would be PM. So I'm interested in a personal and professional sense. You know, how did your own view of spirits and their role sort of evolve? It must have evolved over time, like all of us. But your journey, sort of dancing between the raindrops of how you and this concept would interact, really interests me. So tell me a little bit about that.
In retrospect, when I think about it, it's everything that you immersed in from like a sensory perspective, like the fact that you are in the you grew up in the vines, you know, smell fermentation, you've seen distillation, that kind of stuff, like that. Even though you may not realize it, it impacts the brain. Like it makes a dent. I never told myself I was going to get into spirits. Like I never told myself, I never considered myself very interested in spirits before I asked myself the question, you know, like 12, 13 years ago. But as I started to think about what were the things that I really cared about, these first, I don't know how to say that, like these first experiences, like sensory experiences, kind of like rose up, and it became pretty obvious that booze was something that I cared deeply about. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense. So all I'm trying to say is, like, it felt like it was in me, but while it was in me, I didn't realize it was. If that's, I don't even know if that answers your question, to be honest, but that's my answer.
Sure. So it was there, and it took ignoring it for you to realize that you couldn't, basically.
I guess, yeah. I guess it's, you know, there are people who are very smart and ask themselves a bunch of questions. Sadly, I never been that kind of people. I do stuff, and then I do first, and then I think later. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And so I just like most of the things that I've done were based on gut feelings. Like pretty much like my entire life is as scary as it sounds for somebody who runs a business. It's just most of what I do is based on gut feelings, and for the big decisions, I've never asked myself, I never sat down in front of a piece of paper putting the pros and the cons of shit that I wanted to do. But like when I figured that I didn't want to do engineering anymore, I quit the job. I didn't ask my wife at the time, which I should have, because that was a surprise for her. But I quit the job. When I wanted to go into spirits, I kind of felt it, much like much like when you were drinking something, it talks to your brain, but not necessarily with words. Like it just like impacts the brain. You may see colors, you may see pictures, you may like it's something that so yeah, I'm better at good feelings than I'm at words, really. So I never really thought about all this. It just came up naturally, and now I'm looking back and trying to find a logical explanation. Yeah.
Well, to me, I think it's interesting. You know, what you're describing is like a form of synesthesia, which you see a lot of times with musicians, for example, who will interpret sounds as colors or other senses, things like that. And that's fascinating to me as a whole. It goes to show why I think you are armed both with your gut, but you are able to make such strong selections when you're sort of in the pit picking these things out, because you're of the way that those, when you taste the way that it plays out in your head. And I think as well, half the time on these talks I spend trying to convince people, or at least come around to the logical conclusion that I opened with, that spirits production, it is a creative endeavor. And I think a lot of times that surprises people, because like myself, the first thing I drank was like a PBR I bought at a gas station that was made by a robot, essentially. And if not a robot, a very dutiful bio-robot, because I know that there are great folks who work in those factories, but it was factory produced. And just talking about how you grew up, it would appear to me that there was never any illusion that spirits production was anything but. You saw that these things going into bottles were projects made by real people who at times put in years of their lives and decades of experience and real passion. And to me, when I came on working with PM, knowing that was in every bottle that we were putting forth was really important to me. I don't know if I could have sold, Svedka bubblegum. Not that there's not something beautiful about Svedka bubblegum for the people that like it. I'm never going to denigrate something, but it wasn't something that really connected that I thought I could sell. So with that in mind, that's what PM stands for. But how did you sort of get off with those first releases? Because you had these relationships, but you weren't bottling your own stuff to start. PM was mostly you were selecting and importing stuff. So you'd already quit, you're sleeping on the couch because you didn't tell your wife. How'd you get off that couch and start bringing stuff into the U.S.?
There was a friend of mine who was a friend of mine was a friend of my grandfather, who essentially was who took me on and let me and allowed me to learn about the world of cognac. And so this person opened my eyes towards what I should be, what I'm really interested in. And this person introduced me to a lot of small cognac producers. He opened a lot of doors, and at the time, my idea was that, and again, it wasn't thought. I didn't think about it. It wasn't a business plan or anything, but my thing was, let me be, I wanted to be an independent bottler. Like in my head, the way it would it would play out would be like, I would live in New York. I would fly to Cognac. I would find a really cool cask of something. I would bottle it. I would fly back to New York, and I would sell the thing. And then I would go back again, and once it was sold out, and I would, it's dumb. It doesn't work. But that was the grand thing. So I initially, what I started to do is look for like cool stuff. And as I started to find these cool stuff, I bought a cask, I bought a few demijohns. I was self-founded. It was the money that I had not spent from my like the money I was making as an engineer. And I put that in a small cellar. Like a friend of mine lent me a place, like a garage of sorts. And that's little by little I accumulated. I mean, accumulated is a big word because there was never much in there, but there were really like dope stuff that was that were stored. And but I never done anything with them. So because it was just a giant pain in the ass to do what I thought I would do. It's a lot of travels. It's just, it wasn't meant to be. So I started to find producers who I could bring to the US, and I would sell their own products. I would sell their own brands. And I never really did much with the stuff that I had sourced. So that's it basically the importing of products that were made by others started because it was more doable, I guess, as a one-man show than the independent bottler proposition that I talked about.
Uh, Absolutely. No, but you didn't. It seems to me like that idea didn't really leave your mind though, because you were eventually you did start doing your own labels, if I am correct. Is that right? Like relative.
Yeah, I love the idea. It's just not feasible. Like you need to essentially you need a lot of time and be somewhat of a trustful baby to be able to do that. And I don't have any of these two things. So it's I've always I love sourcing stuff. Like I really love the relationship with the product. Like and also like doing products, like going from beginning to end, sourcing the product, maybe aging it further, bottling it, going like I like following something from A to Z. So it's that's the reason why I got in the business. Like that's really what excites me, like discovering things and stuff. So I did one bottling in the first bottling in 2012. That was one cask of cognac, like one of the first casks that I acquired. It was a horrendous experience because I had never bottled anything in my life. There was not a tool in the cellar. There was no electricity. There was no nothing. So it took forever. And that was a big step for me. That first bottling took a few years to sell, up until it was reviewed by a well-known wine critic, and then whatever was left like flew off the shelf. But that was the very first thing that I did. I always, you know, I kept those casks, I kept those demijohns. I added a few over the years, but not much because it's just like cash doesn't grow on trees. But that cellar has always been sort of the it's the reason why I started the thing. It's the reason why I moved from engineering to booze. So I get a special relationship with that thing.
No, absolutely. And that was what you said around 2012. I think I must have come on probably around 2015 when I left retail. And some guy was willing to take pity on me and hire me for upstate. At that point, I think you moved on to something that was sort of a blend of what you're talking about, because I was selling products for you under the Nicolas Palazzi line. Some of my favorite things we've worked with. I mean, like incredibly old brandies, incredibly unique rums, and since then even more products. So that was sort of what you're talking about. It was a combined label. That whole scenario fascinated me because you were essentially, I mean, I'm going to let you tell people more, but to my eyes, working with an esteemed curator and bottler of sherries, but then finding utility and putting the spotlight on essentially everything that wasn't sherry that you guys found. So I want to know more about Nicolas Palazzi. It seems like the next step in everything we're talking about, in your evolution as in the spirits industry.
It's in retrospect, it's the next step, but it's funny because again, it's never been something planned. So it's just a matter of when you of all people know that, like when you deeply care about something, you keep at doing it, you never deviate from the course, you're really passionate about it. People are going to notice, and you're going to end up meeting a lot of people who share the same interest. And there is very powerful friendships that gets created. So I basically ended up a friend of mine in the wine business, David Dalton, was one of the first in New York to do like sherry dinners. I got introduced to Equipo Navazos with their sherries, and then through Levi I got introduced to Jesus and Eduardo, the two gentlemen behind Equipo Navazos. And honestly, I just being French and liking Spain, I went to meet them just because I was interested in just for a day, and I've never been to Jerez or anything. And I like these dudes, and they kind of like me too. And so we decided to, see if there was a way to collaborate. Like I was doing single cask cognacs, and they were doing a single cask sherries. And we figured there's a lot of booze in southern Spain that we could probably source a single cask. So that was a little less than 10 years ago. At the time I had no idea these guys were really, or I didn't realize they were a big deal. They probably thought I was a much bigger deal than I was, because I was, like nothing. But it just happened because just because we share the like, we like booze that's real, like some stuff, that spirits that have a personality. We share that interest. So we decided, hey, we're gonna meet up like 2-3 times a year. We're gonna go to cool cellars. We're gonna taste some stuff, and if we like a cask, we bottle it and then bring it to the US and sell it. And that, in retrospect, that was a cool move, just because like it helped give me some creds, because these guys were known. But it was really it's all about, like, sharing the passion with people. So that was that at the time. Like, it wasn't a plan.
Sharing back with people, I want to put a pin in this sort of idea of how you sort of the business for you has evolved. Because I think a lot of people don't recognize when they're buying craft spirits, and I've talked about it in other interviews, but you're more qualified than me to tell the real stories of these things. Is like a lot of things that PM imports, I know, things like the Jackie Navarre, for example, but across the board almost, I don't think the average American drinker or consumer really realizes the impact that a cask buy can have on producers. I know from talking to you that the regular purchasing of these products for some folks really is a game changer for them if they're doing small production. So I want to talk about how the business has evolved for you, but I'm interested because you're probably the most qualified of anyone I know to talk about how, buying, whether it's, PM or not, but buying a craft produced product that's artisanally made by a small producer, or by real human hands. You're talking about sharing back. That purchase echoes back via the importer back to the producer in a way that I think is really surprising, or would be surprising for people. So just how big of an impact can, us or producers like us working with these folks, how big of an impact can that make, as you've seen, when you're going back to these places in France and Spain?
I mean, you could see, you literally could see the impact by looking at an additional piece of like the cellar having been built, or like a roof having been redone, or like a tractor having been bought. Those are like very material things. Like we're dealing with people who are they're farmers. They really care for the stuff that they're doing. Nobody is like, nobody's super wealthy. Like, they're just all these people really, they care for the land. They care for the fruits. Most of them are the like 2, 3, 3rd, 4th generation of their family making the stuff. So they live humble lives, and it's really like, obviously, like, we sell booze. Like, we don't save life or anything, so we're not like giving back that much in that sense. But like, when we are buying products, it really makes a difference in the supplier's in the distiller's life. It's I find it fulfilling to know that we're putting money back in somebody's pocket who would have maybe a hard time selling his product or her product because they're busy making the stuff. They don't really have a route to market. They're not salespeople, so they may have incredible stuff, but they don't know who to sell that stuff to. Therefore, when you go back and you see improvements, you see that, I don't know, they changed the shutters on the house, and you like, people are not going to tell you like, well, these 3 shutters, your last PO, your last purchase order paid for that. But you see that it's you're not giving money to a company that's buying by its own shares. It has a palpable effect. People will tend to, like, these distillers will tend to use the money they're making from the products that we're buying from them to first improve the way they're making stuff, like everybody we deal with is very artisanal, and you like I'm thinking about, you were mentioning Jacques Cellar. Like these gentlemen initially didn't have a room in which he was bottling his balls. So he was bottling his balls, like he was like putting like a like some sort of like a big piece of wood on top of barrels, and like labeling the stuff there. It's not very convenient. Like the cellar is cold. I mean, it's just not like it's essentially like not having an office. Well, a couple of years later, like he had built like a little side thing to his cellar, and it would be a small room. There was nothing fancy, but there was a table that was there to enable him to label the stuff properly, as opposed to doing that just on top of a barrel. So that's those are improvements that in people's life, that are like, we're not changing people's life because we're not a big company, so we're nobody is driving Lamborghinis because of the purchase orders we're placing, but we do make a small impact, and I like knowing that, like it does make a difference.
Yeah, and it meant a lot to me when I first came on. That you can see real change, and yeah, it's not as though you go back and someone has a gold toilet, but that's almost change that folks can't understand. But I needed this, and now I can do this to better my life on a day-to-day basis, is something that I think everyone can understand.
Yeah.
On that topic, we go from us bringing things in to the country that maybe people have never tried before. Right before I sort of made my exit into the comics world, we started doing American whiskey and American bourbon. We go to something that essentially we know that almost any amount of it can be sold in the current climate. But that said, when you tell the story about how you got into Mic Drop, it is similarly unassuming. You tend to pitch it of, I wasn't planning on doing this, and then I tasted some whiskey and it was great, so I did it. Is that what went on there as we move? That's how I sum up most of the. I went to Spain, I tasted some things, they were great, and so I bought them. Is that what went on with Mic Drop, which has taken on sort of a culty type release schedule, which is exciting to me as someone who was involved in it? Was it a similar thing? You just happened upon some whiskey and you said, "Yeah, now's the fucking time," or what went on there?
It sounds like I'm making it up, but it's like when I say like everything today that I've done is based on a gut feeling. It's really true. Like this, like from when we were working together, like we had no bourbon, and we our customers were asking us, like our customers were happy to buy very cognacs and cool armagnac from us, but they would ask like what kind of bourbon you had, and we would be like, we got none. And that conversation would happen like times and times again every day, and I just got fucking tired of it. Like I would and started to look at who out there was making bourbon that we could sell. The problem is that we could buy bourbon, but it was like I couldn't find bourbon that we would want to associate ourselves with, because of just finding good products that would match the PM ethos. It was just it was hard to find it. Like most of it was super expensive stuff that I spent like 3 months in like super tiny barrels. It wasn't the vibe. So I kind of got upset at some point, and I said, fuck it. If we can't find it, and if we can't find a product that's already done, that's already made, we're gonna try to source bulk stuff and that we like, and just like sell it in New York. We'll have our own bourbon. Where I was lucky is that over the years I built a good network of people who kind of are like-minded. So when I put the word out that I would love to taste good bourbon cask, and I had no clue about bourbon whatsoever. Like I'm very new to the bourbon game, and I started to get a bunch of samples. A lot of them were average. A bunch of them were a lot of others were really bad. and essentially somebody said, hey, there's 20 casks over there. They're stored, in that warehouse. If you want to taste them, the person is willing to sell them. I tasted them and I was like, oh shit, this stuff is really good. And we bought them. That was the first mic drop, and we vastly oversold it because none of us was aware how fast it was going out of the door. We were used to selling brandy. That is really hard to sell. And all of a sudden, all of us was, having this conversation with customers. You want 10 cases? Sure. You want 20 cases? Of course. Not realizing that we had none to sell, and we committed like hundreds of cases that we didn't have to people who subsequently got upset at us, but it's just because it was another thing that wasn't really planned. And that's kind of how it kind of came up together. It was essentially luck. That's pretty much it.
I mean, no doubt. And I think it's telling as well, as annoying as it can be for people all the time, and it was all the time, to say, oh, well, what do you have for bourbon? I think you recognize the issue as well, is that it wasn't just what you have for bourbon. It's, we recognize the general quality and what something that we release means. And so it wasn't just as simple as getting a bourbon. Like, then there's the challenge of getting a bourbon that fits in, as you said, with the aesthetic and the stylistic goals. Because as much as people want that bourbon, they want a bourbon that's as good as a PM Spirits bourbon.
It's the one thing that made difference, and I think that's one of the reasons why we were fortunate to work with the great Steve Orlando. Is that the thing is that the portfolio is actually created in the sense that, like, everything that we sell, everything we peddle, we stand by it. And when I say we, I mean as a team. Like, everything is tasted. We know what we sell. We know why we sell it. And if we don't like it, we won't sell it. And if the stuff is great, but it's made by people we don't like, then we won't sell it. So it's kind of like that ethos is what has made a difference. Like, if of course it's great to be making more money, but I first and foremost, it's about selling the right products. So yeah, if like, I don't want to settle for something that doesn't fit with what we believe in as a business, just to have it. Like, I'd rather not have it. And if it doesn't exist, and there's a chance that we can make it, I'll give it a shot and see what gives.
All right. So as for selling the right products, you had started out wanting to be an independent bottler. Took the long way around. It only took a decade. Now I'm out the door. We only talk at Christmas and Thanksgiving. Like it was a real breakup. And you're doing PM projects, something I know very little about. But it sounds like you're finally dipping your toe back in to being an independent bottler. So what the hell is going on here? I've seen the labels; they're very sexy, but I'm not that shallow. I need to know what's inside before I commit myself. So what is this next thing? It feels like it all kind of led here, but what is it?
Well, it's the next thing, but it's also the last thing, because like that Cellar. Well, I mean, as far as the Cellar, as far as the what I said is that 10 years ago I started with that Cellar, and I started to collect stuff, not realizing that I wasn't going to be able to bottle them the way I wanted and sell them the way I wanted. So I had things in that Cellar, and those are great things that I picked out over the years. I needed to do something with them. At some point, you can't just pile stuff up in a cellar and nothing. It evaporates. At some point, it's going to go past its peak, and so it's not going to be good. So essentially, COVID COVID hit. I had planned to release some of these casks last year, and I got too busy. So these some of these casks I didn't get a chance to like go back to France and buy all the stuff myself. And COVID hit, and everybody was stuck home. And a couple of good friends of mine were stuck home in Cognac, and we started to talk. And I said, all right, we got this cool shit in the cellar. We were supposed to buy some of it last year. How about we bottle it now, and you know we gives us something to play around, something that we all excited about. So there were 2 cognacs and 3 whiskeys in that cellar. And I had worked on them with my friend Jean-Noël Pelleton, who was like one of the French like only master coopers, like a dude who was like super knowledgeable about cognac aging, wood, obviously, and because he makes barrels with his own hands. And we worked on those products, and we over the years, and we had pretty good expectations that they would be like some very high quality cognacs and whiskeys once they would be ready. We felt like they were quite ready, so we said, all right, fuck it, let's bottle them. So that those casks, the casks that were in the cellar were bottled in July. And we received them a few weeks ago. There's an EXO cognac. There's like a very old cognac that we called Hommage at Yves and Jean-Noël Pelleton, the father and son. Yves passed away not like a couple months ago, and these are cognacs that I'm very proud about, because I sourced them. I aged them further. We blended one with demi-gems of old cognac that I had sourced initially, like 11 years ago or so. It's the whiskeys I sourced from the Aaron distillery. It's essentially it's 2 cognacs, 3 whiskeys, and that's the last bit of the cellar. Like the cellar now is empty, and I don't foresee going out there and collecting stuff in the foreseeable future. So that's why I was saying that's the beginning and the end of one thing.
Well, so it's it's almost as if you segued me into the next thing I wanted to talk about, but we didn't really plan this because I never planned anything, like you're saying. So PM projects came about in part due to the pandemic, due to COVID. And one thing I did want to ask you, and I would be remiss not to. A lot of the things that I've talked about in the other interview series, which we're doing because of my friendship with you, you've been keeping an eye on. A lot of the things that we're talking about is how these folks are innovating in the current time within their own fields, and so I was interested in the talks we've seen. I love asking these folks what they learned in previous fields that might benefit their current one, or how it might reflect on the spirits industry. You've been watching me talk to these people. One of the last things I want to talk about is, have you seen things that and connections in these worlds that you didn't expect? When you're seeing me talk to these folks, whether they're in entertainment, live entertainment, whether they're comedians, whether they're cosplayers, were there things you saw in those conversations you're like, oh, I never would have thought that this could be like, something that I've learned here is useful for my gig in spirits? I've learned a lot from talking to them, but I'm interested to see if you've learned anything, because we're doing this to show that everything is more similar than people think. So I got to ask you.
There's one thing. I mean, I haven't rehearsed this. The one thing that jumps to mind is the sense that everybody is genuine and care as far as their in terms of personality and in terms of what they do, and that's probably a part in what make these people successful. and that applies also to what PM is doing. I'm not exactly sure if I'm wording the things correctly, but what I'm trying to say is, like, one, everybody you talk to is very genuine. Everybody is there's no mask on. I mean, except for, maybe Dan with an actual mask on. But everybody is, see what I mean. From a personality standpoint, everyone's true, and it probably does reflect in their work and in their approach, and it certainly has made a difference with PM, where we've always been straightforward about, what we do, how we're doing it, who we're doing it with, and it just it's essentially cutting through the bullshit. I feel is maybe one of the connections between the different people that you talk to, and what PM's been doing. I don't know if it's a satisfactory answer. I wish I could blow your mind with some like super mindful shit, but that's what comes to mind.
I mean, you are literally the boss. So, no, I think authenticity is funny. It's what we hit on with Danhausen, and I think it has ended up being a subtle undercurrent throughout all of the interviews, including this one. So I think you're totally right. The last thing I wanted to ask about, as I will talk at length about until people are sick of hearing it. Obviously, I write comic books. Where am I going to bring that around? I tend to always say as I said, I write comic books. I don't usually say graphic novelist. I don't usually say I work in graphic novels. I'm reminded of a bartender I used to work with who really was adamant about people calling her a bartender and not a mixologist. And I tend to say comic books because I think the phrase graphic novel, while it has its place, also has in some level in our industry an inherent idea that an inherent shame towards the phrase comic books, and the idea, well, this can't be the thing we read as kids. We have to call it something else to make it okay for us to read as adults. Similar to bartender versus mixologist. Like, we can't just be someone who makes drinks. We have to come up with a new word that seemingly has a separate level of prestige. Now, what the hell am I talking about? You love to say you sell booze. I haven't heard you say spirits once, even though the company is called PM Spirits, and I say spirits because I'm a pretentious asshole. But that's kind of the point. You say booze, and I didn't plan on asking you this, but it's meaningful to me. So, is there a reason you go on that route? It feels like it would speak to the philosophy behind the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like ideally we're selling nerdy stuff made by people like no one knows about. But I don't want to make it pretentious. Like, we're selling real products that are made by real people, but they're meant to be drunk. They're meant to be shared, and like, I don't want to make it sound like it's a complex thing that one needs to know a lot about spirits to enjoy them. Like, it's the same thing as when people are asking, like, what sort of glassware should I use to drink stuff? I don't know, whatever you got. It's just if you have a rocks glasses, you don't need 17 kind of glassware to drink like different stuff. It's the same thing. It needs to be approachable, and I mean, to me, booze is something. It's an everyday thing. I don't want to over intellectualize it. I mean, you know that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't look like I got the glasses, but that's as far as I'll go in the I don't look like an intellectual. Like, I look like a dude who may do push-ups for a living, but that's pretty much it. So it's not like I want to make it I want to make it straightforward. It's about the people who are making it. It's about what's in the bottle. We're trying to make it cool so people are interested, because we think it's cool, but we don't want to make it we don't want to make it uptight. We want to make it approachable, and we want to have real conversations with people. So if you start to use words that create barriers and stuff, it's just like you don't have the right conversation. I like Steve Orlando because when I'm talking to Steve Orlando, I'm talking to the real Steve Orlando. I'm not talking to professional Steve Orlando. I'm not talking to like daytime Steve Orlando. And it's just like it's you. And you're talking to me. You're talking to the real me. That's how we want to talk about booze. That's the kind of conversation we want to have. So spirits. Yeah, sure, I can say spirits, but I'd rather say booze. Yeah.
Well, ending our conversation series with a comment on conversations seems appropriate.
Smart. Mr. Smart.
See, it's more than just the glasses, man. It's what's behind the glasses that is really showing your deft verbal skill. Look, I'm really glad we could catch up. Yeah, even outside of the pandemic, it's been a minute because we're stuck in different cities. But I think for folks watching this, they've always wondered, as this is the 7th or 8th one of these interviews, what the hell is the baseline that I'm talking about? So it's good to have you on, and man, I'm glad we could talk. So thank you.
It was awesome. Thanks, Steve. See you.
Yeah, we will. Well, maybe we'll have you back once that cellar is empty, and we can talk a little bit about how you're going to fill it. I know you say you're not going to, but I have known you for like 10 years, so it'll be empty until it's not, until something else catches your eye.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.